So, for 23, that is April the 23rd, 2015, on the Ochelli Effect, as the bumper tells you, I am Chuck Ochelli, your host. What a week, what a week, what a week. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, deciding to spend this little bit of time with us on a Thursday night. You know, that wonderful Thor's Day and all that. The world is getting strange and stranger as we go. I want to thank you for tuning in, whether you decided to utilize your applicable application and your fondle slab of choice to utilize the TuneIn or the iTunes radio thing or the Shoutcast or whatever, or if you just decided to go to the website at ucy.tv/TOE, it is all much appreciated. Tonight's going to be an odd sort of night. We are definitely going to spend some time discussing the Jade Helm thing that is going around. We'll give a little definition for that. We'll get some interesting insights from my, recurring guest, Frank Gregory Ford. He'll be on in just a few minutes, and he'll discuss his insights into that as a former military intelligence operative and counterintelligence specialist who was, a medical person, but also ran intelligence operations, was involved in many, many intelligence operations over the years, things like that, so it should be a point of interest. Of course, had an interesting occurrence today. Before I got out of bed, I had a conversation with God, you see, and she said to me, "Look, you've done something of reasonable significance, so I'm going to give you a reward and I'm going to grant you a wish." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "But wait, I'm going to grant you a wish, but you got to understand it's got to be something that is not, so completely impossible or implausible that it would shake the foundations of reality. But other than that, I'll grant you anything you want." So the first thing that popped into my mind was world peace. To which God replied, you're talking about changing far too many things that are part of reality there. The nature of human beings, the condition of the planet. Too many things would be changed by everlasting world peace on earth. You got to pick something else, Chuck. You just do. I said, okay. How about if I had a female partner in my life who was not insane, who was not deranged from time to time? To which God replied, does it have to be the whole world that has to be at peace, Chuck? Anyway, if you don't get that, then you don't. What can I say? Chaos reigns in my personal life, and that is the way it is. Boy, do I wish I was intoxicated tonight, but I'm not. So I'm also opening up phone lines tonight for open discussion. As I said before, I do want to focus on the Jade Helm thing, and I'll get to a mainstream description about it. Okay, and we'll discuss what it is they mean about it, what it is the rumors are about it, and whatever it is you guys want to add in. So if you want to call, if you're not on my Skype list, the Charles.Ochelli Skype list, you can simply pick up a phone and dial 718-717-8296. Once again, that is 718-717-8296. That is the call-in for UCY. That is the call-in for my show as it airs live. And, oh, you know what? I did forget to thank all those people that do listen to the show further on down the stream. You pick it up on YouTube. You pick it up as an MP3. You trade it with your friends. You seem to email it to each other. All of these other things, especially those that get angry at what I'm doing. Speaking of those that get angry at what I'm doing, Saturday night we are going to do JFK Myths Part 3. Except this time we're going to focus on one conglomeration, one individual, one subject that seems to lead into so many directions that it's beyond implausible. I mean, what is less plausible than the magic bullet theory? Well, you're going to hear it on Saturday night when Carmine Savastano, Trish Fleming, and Zachary Gendro join me once again. So we're going to continue that series on the JFK myths, and as I promised in an exchange online, I will attempt to extract the JFK stuff from all the other shows except when we do one of these focused specials. And there may be a series of 10 of these things, depending on how much mythology I think needs to be, destroyed on the historical reality. Also, the criticism that the Warren Commission hasn't even been addressed is because, well, look, the whole reason why the Warren Commission does not get addressed first is because, see, they are the original lie that led to everybody digging into things and trying to supposedly expose the truth, but in so many different ways went off the rails. And I pass this lesson along to those who are interested in truth in the 9/11 historical information and actually wish to see truth there. You have to take the example of something that was, nearly 40 years old at the time that 9/11 occurred. Not quite 40, but, 38 years old. 38 years earlier, JFK, the assassination there, which was a brief moment in history, really, had taken place. And the truth-seeking regarding that has been a precarious sort of balance between decent revelation, solid investigative work, and, of course, fringe lunacy, which winds up making the entire community look bad. And this is the very same thing that has happened regarding the 9/11 Truth Movement. However, the 9/11 Truth Movement had a whole lot more of the garbage and nonsense infiltrating it. Even the stuff that does seem to be more solid, I'm finding, is more and more suspect because of different agendas, things they won't discuss, things they won't touch, things they don't want to get into. And I am only settled on the 9/11 story in my mind to believe that the official explanation is foolishness, just like with the Kennedy assassination. Other than that, I'm not particularly married to any particular theory or even set of suspects entirely. There are plenty of them. There are plenty of possibilities. And I think the diversion from the truth that has come out of that, is parallel with the JFK thing, except, again, like I say, the media consciousness, the media mechanisms that were available to truth seekers and those seeking the truth via learning from those who are actually conducting legitimate original investigations, is a different evolution because the technology was different at the time. I mean, in the 1970s, the heyday of the origins of the JFK stuff, I mean, it did really occur in the 60s, but the real prolific origins of the dissemination of all sorts of information came in the 1970s. And at that time, when you consider that broadcast TV was really the standard, and cutting edge technology was, that cable box that we all remember that either had a dial on it or a bunch of switches and buttons and things like that. And of course, even if you had a channel that you weren't subscribed to, you could kind of tune to it and screw around with a little tuning knob and maybe even get to look at it in black and white on a color television. Computer technology was primitive at best compared to what it is now. We certainly did not dream of the internet as the general public. The military had its uses for integrated computer systems and things like that at the time, and even more so in the 1980s. But we didn't see that stuff really land in, the general public's hands until the 90s. So, 20 years before there was even a remote internet possibility regarding the dissemination of information, this stuff was going on there. And that gives you a completely different evolution. Now, when 9/11 occurred, you're looking at, a situation where the internet was in full swing, information was being shared instantaneously throughout the globe, and this is, like I say, a completely different character from the possibilities. It's almost like the Gutenberg press compared to broadcast. I mean, it's a markedly different world. So therefore, some things that happened in quick time or in fast motion, at a much more rapid pace when it comes to the 9/11 truth situation, didn't happen in the JFK thing. But that's why the lessons for disinformation, badly sourced information, and terribly sourced things need to be combated. And of course, we're talking about a half century's worth of buildup of garbage. So this is why that series is necessary. Now, in recent times, alternative media in general, what do I see a lot of? Well, in the more underground and fringe areas, I definitely see a whole lot of traffic and discussion regarding the Jade Helm. Okay, Jade Helm becoming a buzzword in the alternative and underground media, and occasionally getting its mention in the mainstreams. Okay. Now, Frank Gregory Ford has joined me tonight, and like I said, the interesting insights that this gentleman will be able to provide regarding this should be fascinating. Now, how you doing tonight?
I'm absolutely great, Chuck. I'm looking forward to speaking on about 5 different subjects and Jade Helm also. So, when you're ready to talk about global plots, to subjugate, the individual freedoms of our citizens, hey, I'm ready to go.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and that is exactly what I discuss all the time. And sometimes people think that some of the stuff I discuss is not exactly relevant because it's ancient history and things like that. But this is where you're going to learn the lessons about what is being done today. This is how you learn how these institutions, individuals, and various cabals behave, is by dissecting that which has already occurred. Otherwise, I mean, what do you need? Crystal balls in every direction. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I picked up just the most mainstream thing I could think of regarding Jade Helm. All right. And I figured that I'll read that a little bit just for the listener because, again, I'm seeing it in the fringe. I'm hearing it in the alternative media a little bit. I'm seeing it in the posts. But I'm not sure exactly which direction they're going in. I mean, some people are basically screaming, be ready for the FEMA camps. Others are saying, that this is just a psychological operation which is meant to instill fear in those of us that find the government to be a suspect entity in general. Things like that. All sorts of different possibilities. But I figure, let's look at the most mainstream thing I could, which is the Washington Post, all right? And their headline is Why Operation Jade Helm 15 is Freaking Out the Internet and Why It Shouldn't Be. Okay, that's literally the headline. So here we go. The mission is vast both geographically and strategically. Okay, elite service members from all 4 branches of the U.S. military will launch an operation this summer in which they will operate covertly among the U.S. public and travel from state to state in military aircraft. Texas, Utah, and a section of Southern California are labeled as hostile territory, and New Mexico isn't much friendlier. Let's see. That's the scheme for Jade Helm 15, a new special operations exercise that runs from July 15th to September 15th. Army Special Operations Command announced it last week. Now, this is actually from March the 30th, so that's when the article's from. So it was announced last week as of March 30th. Okay. Let's see, I announced it last week. Saying the size and scope of the mission sets it apart from many other training exercises. The nature of warfare, this is a quote now, the nature of warfare is always changing, and U.S. Army Special Operations Command's missions is to make it certain that the Army's various special operation forces are trained, equipped, and organized to successfully conduct worldwide special operations in support of our nation's interests. This is from Army Lieutenant Colonel Mark Lastoria, a command spokesperson, said in an email. Another quote, training exercise Jade Helm is going to assist our special operations soldiers and leadership in refining the skills needed against an ever-changing foreign threat. End quote. The exercise has prompted widespread conspiracy theories that the United States is preparing to hatch martial law. Okay, let's see what else. In particular, some have expressed alarm about this map, and there's a map pictured here, which, let's see, which outlines events for the exercise and unclassified documents posted online last week. The Washington Post verified them to be legitimate by speaking to Army sources. They appear to have been prepared for local authorities. So they've outlined where these states will be hostile, where the friendly territory is, where the neutral or somewhat hostile territory is, generally speaking in the southwestern quadrant of the continental United States. Okay. Now, this is back to the article. Several media outlets have noted that the Army has pushed back on the outcry, including Stars and Stripes, Army Times, and the Houston Chronicle, which I think is odd. But it's also worth noting that the military has routinely launched exercises in the past in which regions of the United States are identified as hostile for the purposes of training. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, by the way, folks, just a couple more pieces here, just so we have a good outline of what we're talking about. Consider Bold Alligator, a naval exercise in which thousands of Marines and sailors have been involved in the past. The most recent version was launched last fall and included amphibious landings to prevent insurgent groups in the fictional country known as Garnet, Georgia and part of Florida in real life, from launching attacks. Okay, now, in another example, U.S. Special Forces support fictional guerrilla forces in numerous countries across North Carolina. Well, one second there. Not countries, counties, excuse me. No, I'll try again. In another example, U.S. Special Forces support fictional guerrilla forces in numerous counties across North Carolina in the exercise Robin Sage. Green Beret soldiers work to liberate the country of Pineland and operate in close proximity to civilians who were warned that they may hear blank gunfire. Marine Special Operations troops also have an exercise that is in some ways similar and called Derna Bridge. It spans several counties in western South Carolina and includes some activities in Sumter National Forest. Okay, so in other words, there are various different exercises that have gone on domestically where different parts of the United States are considered to be hostile territories and things like this. Now, this seems to actually be one of the things that they do in intelligence training anyway. I mean, a lot of localized places that are local to different bases where a lot of people are stationed and being trained, are often involved in these kind of exercises. Isn't that right?
That is, Chuck. I know for a fact, me personally, when I was with Special Forces in Utah and when I was undergoing intelligence training in Arizona, that's exactly the case. All right, but this is different. This is something different. One has to look when you in analyzing these types of quote exercises. You have to look at what has gone on before. All right. Since I did those exercises in Utah and also in Arizona, the world was a different place. The United States was a different place, and we had not had any major terrorist attack. And of course, it was in Arizona, as I've told your listeners before, Arizona, where I had my initial briefing by Colonel Schaefer on the impending 9/11 attacks, which happened 14 months later. But what concerns me about this whole Jade Helm issue is, yes, this is years later, and yes, the protections for American citizens, called the Posse Comitatus laws, have been repealed. Okay, there are no more protections protecting American citizens from its own military. There are none. That was done away with handily by, of course, who else but George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. They, after 9/11, they had a carte blanche to completely dismantle any protections of U.S. citizens under the auspices of, quote, fighting terrorism, right? We're quote, still fighting those terrorists, okay? Even though everybody except for maybe my grandmother thinks that Al Qaeda is a bad old terrorist group operating on its own internationally. No, that's not the case here. The case with Jade Helm is that there is an intimidation factor going on. When you say pushback, actually this is a push forward aggression. Okay, the government wants to see the reaction of uniformed people on its streets carrying weapons, okay, with night vision goggles and body armor on, and walking around to judge this, as you say, the PSYOP effect, okay, the psychological effect. They want to see what the population is going to do. Okay, fortunately we have an armed population, so that is a major question. What this population is going to do, but for the most part, we have become fairly subservient and passive in the face of these post 9/11 dismantlings of our civil rights and protections.
Well, right, and I put this in context because, and here's where my, here I am. I'm going to be the conspiracy theorist guy again, right? But I put this in context because domestically, okay, in recent years, we had the situation which I view as a test operation, out there at the Bundy Ranch. We have the entire campaign now that has gone on with the police brutality situation and watching what happens when a population becomes, you have sort of civil unrest going on in particular areas. I view it all as a giant operation in order to test what's going to, what the reaction of the American public is to these, militarized, localized police entities. And it doesn't matter, if it's the local police dressed up in the black uniforms or if it's military guys, if they're armed all the same, it's still the same reaction. I think that this has been a giant data collection exercise, and here I am, seeming like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm trying to put this stuff in context, We had legitimate outrage from particular populations regarding the treatment of its citizens with the more militarized police, which I'm very glad to see the mainstream utilizing that term. And by no means am I trying to minimize what's going on with Jade Helm. I just wanted to put the mainstream part of the narrative into the equation here. Now, what I see is that this is part of the same, in a way, the same old operating procedures that they've always done regarding the training of special operations people. But at the same time, it seems very interesting that, yes, in the context of the post 9/11 reality, in the context of, a little bit of civil unrest being loosed upon the population and being propagandized by the mainstream, I think that this is a perfect opportunity, whether it was planned for or not, for somebody to collect exactly what would happen if we had a seriously angry population in particular areas, exactly what it would be like to deal with crowd control, what happens when people turn against the policing entities of all kinds, okay? And meanwhile, now you have the military aspect. Let's see if there's a difference if we introduce the military aspect being nearby. Does that cause, everybody to sort of quiet down in the adjoining areas, stuff like that? That's what I see with Jade Helm. Does that cause, the adjoining areas to quiet down and sort of become more submissive as a population? Okay, and then you put all this stuff together, and what you have is a lot of data collected in case there was the the calling, the actual introduction of real martial law. And of course our civil rights have been seriously redacted, taken away, cut back post 9/11. Gee, protect me, big brother government, because I need your protection because of the terrible terrorists that are going to come from all over the place. So if you put all that stuff together, what you have here, I think, is a giant data collection operation. But that's the way I'm seeing it. Tell me if that's, a little bit off, but that's the way I'm taking it.
Well, you're absolutely correct. It's always a data collection. They're always watching. It's called G5, okay? That's the type of operation this is. The G5 is how does the civilian population of any country, not just the United States, but any country, interact with military personnel? Is it an adversarial relationship that they have? Is it an intimidating relationship? Is it a cooperative relationship? Is it an accepting passive relationship? That's what they're analyzing for, is something called G5. That is one of the 5 areas that the military has to take into consideration when it goes into any country or into the United States. Always remember who fought the Civil War. It wasn't armies that fought the Civil War. They called it the Northern Army and the Southern Army. No, it was militias, okay, militias attacking other militias. What do we have now in the United States? We have something called National Guards. I know. I was in the California National Guard and the Utah National Guard. That's exactly who is going to be doing these operations. Now, one of the things that has changed, and I need to get this across to people, is something that we've always had as a protection in this country and protecting us against the government, is we've had property, okay? We've had homes, okay, that actually act as a buffer. The real property acts as a buffer in dealing with an aggressive government, okay? And a government that's intent on pushing and authorizing its own authority onto its own civilian population, okay? That's why you should never, ever trust your government, because we have a situation now, which didn't happen before 9/11. We have a situation which, like I said before, you could, if you need to post bail, hey, no problem. You put your house up. If you get tossed into the clink, into the hoosegow, okay, you put your house up. What happens when you don't have property, when you don't have money in the bank? What happens? Your body becomes the property that the government wants. The government will take your body. Your body becomes a property of the government, okay? And if you don't think so, just look at our prisons. How many thousands, hundreds of thousands of inmates do we have in this country that will completely agree with me when I say that? The government will come for your body, okay? So that's what I'm seeing with these exercises. is, and the first test of this theory was in Washington, D.C., okay, on the commuter trains. Mm-hmm. When I couldn't believe it when I heard it, but the commuter trains in the morning, there in the corridor, all of a sudden they were going to have security people patting people down, crotch checks, the whole bit, okay? That wasn't the check for security to find out if there were any bad old Al-Qaeda operatives smuggling crotch bombs or sock bombs on the trains. No, that was to see what people would do when actually their bodies were intruded upon, all right? And so guess what? There was a reaction. I know I'd have a reaction, okay, as in turning right around somebody to check my crotch in without my authorization and pop them one, okay, right in the jibs. That's what I would do. And I'd expect every citizen in this country to do exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And so that's what started to happen. So surprise, they DC'd that exercise very quickly, okay? What happened then immediately, somebody from, of course, the AIPAC lobby, the Jewish lobby, Joe Lieberman, whiny Joe Lieberman, as we call him in the trades, the intelligence trades, he gets on and says, oh, we've got to stop this bad old internet, okay? People are saying bad things about the government now, and bad things about Israel, and bad things about, the military forces that are coming back and being asked if they have any problem. As I was. When I returned from Iraq, I was asked, do you have a problem killing U.S. citizens? If there's riots and civil unrest, do you have a problem killing U.S. citizens? You're damn right I do. They didn't want to hear from me. You're damn right I do, because guess what? U.S. citizens are going to be angry about something that sets them off, all right? And so, but surprise, I was in the minority. I didn't think I would be. I thought my fellow soldiers coming back from Iraq, they'd say, hell no, we're not going to shoot on our own citizens. No, the majority, and this is called brainwashing. This is what boot camp in the military does to its people. Okay, that's why there's conformity in the military. That's why you have uniforms, so everybody looks the same and thinks the same. Okay, you saw what happened when I didn't think the same. Your listeners know what happened when I didn't think the same as everybody else. Okay.
Well, yeah, when you were actually trying to do what was right and actually follow the legal procedures, and reporting on things that were not supposed to be going on, well, what did they do with you? They gave you the option to pull it back, and then when you wouldn't do that, they strapped you to a stretcher and renditioned you out of, out of Iraq, which, I hate to laugh, but it's just one of those things where it's like, the guy who does the right thing, well, this is who we're going to punish and torture. The guy who just follows orders regardless of whether it's correct, incorrect, legal, illegal, immoral, or moral, it doesn't matter so long as you follow your orders. And isn't that what it comes down to? Just like with the TSA, it wasn't necessarily about the fact that, they were given the opportunity for people to feel everybody up. And, even at airports and everywhere else, that wasn't what it was really about. It was just about the idea of submission. Submit to somebody in a uniform. Submit to somebody who has, been ostensibly given a superior stature to yourself. So it was about submission. It was about acquiescence. It was about giving in and letting them violate you. It's not the most vicious of violations to get felt up, but it's pretty bad. And meanwhile, it was about conditioning people to submit, and to submit to even things that they would find, personally reprehensible. And that's what it's about. Of course, the military, they do condition you to follow orders, to not think, but to snap respond first. I mean, that's what they do. They break you down to build you up, don't they?
Eloquently put, Chuck. I just today, just this morning, all right, okay, I'm dealing with a very interesting situation, and I would love your listeners to go to the internet, to type in this name, okay? This name affects everybody in America, and it affects our world situation right now. This is of the special forces. Okay, to show you what kind of special forces we're dealing with here, this is Colonel James Steele, Steele. Go to your computers and type in that name, okay, and see what you come up with. I'll tell you what you can come up with, okay? He is known as the Butcher of Latin America, all right? And just today, I have spent a lot of time on the phone with a general and several other people explaining how this man, okay, spent his whole career, okay, in the service of America, in uniform, in special forces, running around setting up torture chambers around the world, especially in Latin America, and, as I said, in the Middle East. All right? Do you think, how much compassion do you think you would get from this man if you were in his hands? Okay? Pull him up and look at him, okay? And tell me, how much compassion do you think your child would have or your loved one would have in the hands of this man? Well, I can tell you personally, one of my best friends was in his hands, all right, and tortured by this man, okay? He survived, but just barely, okay? To this day, this friend of mine is damaged, okay? And this was from when he was in Latin America. This man, okay, is now, and you're wondering why I'm mentioning this, okay? This is what we're talking about, the violation of the personal body, okay? This is what the government wants you to accept, is this violation. Because George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, we've got to get the AIPAC lobby in there, Paul Wolfowitz, they admire this man. They say that he is one of the finest Americans ever to walk the earth. This man, Colonel James Steele, the Butcher of Latin America, all right? This is what we're dealing with. This is the mindset of the people that dismantled all the protections that we're protecting Americans from our own military, from our own government. Those are gone. Those are gone. And this is what we're facing now. These people are, Colonel Steele is being idolized now. Okay? So this is a real alarming issue. And what's frightening is he's being idolized in conjunction with Jade Helm. Okay? This is what we can expect if we have passive people sitting there, uniformed special forces, walk up to them, tell them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and then having their own personal bodies violated and space violated. And guess what? For good measure, if you don't like it, you'll be turned over to somebody like Colonel James Steele of the Special Forces. You don't think you've had a nightmare? Hey, wait, okay, till this guy gets a hold of you and his trained goons, all right?
Well, right, it was guys like this. I mean, realistically, those death squads that we used to hear about in places like El Salvador and Guatemala and all these other places, these death squads, in Iraq as well.
Iraq. Yeah.
But I mean, just focusing on South America, I mean, there is tons of stuff that is being ignored, historically regarding this. But who do you think taught these guys how to, extract information and deal with their political enemies, deal with their dissident population, deal with the people that were actually resisting? But guess what? It was guys like this guy who were down there instructing these Latin American elements that were being supported by our various agencies and things like that. These were the people that, the alleged Contras and things like that. These were the people that we were training. And this is the type of guy that we sent to train them. I mean, to give people an idea of the types of things, that about that this guy had participated in, I mean, would you mind laying a couple of specifics out there about the types of things we're talking about here?
Okay, well, let me see. He was trained in the School of the Americas, okay? Is there anybody out there that doesn't know who the School of the Americas is and what it does? Okay, the School of the Americas was actually in Panama when I was in Panama, and I can say two of my fellow commanders attended the School of the Americas, and they said that's what they do, is teach how to put down an insurgency with brutal methods in any country, okay, specifically Latin America, all right? But that's where Colonel Steele went, was the School of the Americas, and to this day, okay, and I can cite the legal precedent that happened not more than 4 months ago in the International Human Rights Commission in The Hague, where they said anybody connected, and this includes Colonel Steele, with the death squad formation in El Salvador and the rest of Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, all these places that had death squads operating in them and torture chambers. I think I've even mentioned a luminary of Colonel James Steele, okay, who was headed up the El Salvador torture chambers. His name was Blowtorch Bob Suarez. All right, Blowtorch Bob Suarez. Okay, these people are the things of nightmares. Okay, and there was so much anger, especially after Father Bourgeois, a Catholic missionary in El Salvador, filed charges in the international courts, and he was beaten down and repressed, of course, by the Reagan and Bush administrations. But Father Bourgeois filed charges to bring to the world the mass murder, torture, and rendition of Operation Q-Bark that was going on in Central America, and it was being headed up by this man, Colonel James Steele, okay, and his sidekick, Blowtorch Bob, okay. So, and I don't need to tell anybody how you get a nickname like Blowtorch Bob. Okay? Well,
right. Using a blowtorch on other human beings, that's awfully merciful and humanitarian, isn't it? For the Skype question, why is it that we're not bringing up the stuff that Barack Obama has done? Are we avoiding that? No. Barack Obama is not really worth mentioning here because he is just the continuation. None of this stuff has stopped. Post-W administration, don't think for a moment that any of this stuff, went to some big halt. There wasn't any big change that occurred when Obama took office. He is really the continuation of the Bush presidency regarding these types of policies and operations throughout the world. If anything, he's actually expanded some of these programs rather quietly. Continued on with the brush fire warfare in the Middle East, and notice there has been nothing done to bring about a cessation of any of the covert hostilities in South America. You're not hearing about it in your news media anymore, but trust me, it's still going on. Okay, so Barack Obama is only noteworthy in that he is the continuation of these policies which were initiated by the other presidents and other administrations that have been mentioned here. We're not letting him off the hook. Don't think that for just a minute. It's just a matter of there has been no market change, since Obama took office. So it's not really worth mentioning. You might as well just call it Bush's third and fourth terms, really. When it comes to stuff like this, it just continued on really completely, like I said, unabated or even increased rather quietly, a lot of this stuff. So don't think for a moment that we're letting the current president or the current administration or the current Congress or the current anything off the hook. It's just that it's really more of the same. So there is to answer your "why aren't you mentioning Barack Obama" question.
Sure.
Okay.
I can answer a little bit of that, Chuck. First of all, let's face it. Very few people are elected president in this country unless they have the CIA's blessing. Okay. And in this case, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say this. But Barack Obama, there's a lot of missing years in his background. Okay, there's no question about that. But here is something that you can take to the bank, that his mother was running death squads, okay, CIA-directed death squads in Indonesia for the Sukarno regime, to keep the Sukarno regime in power, all right? She was running death squads. Remember the infamous black X on the door? Okay, as my childhood friend Ebert Weinhammer, okay, his mother brought him. Her husband disappeared. This was in Indonesia and Jakarta. Her husband just went to the store to buy something, disappeared. The next day, she had a black X on her door, and she took her 5-year-old son, who was my childhood friend, Ebert. Okay, she immediately came to the United States, because she was marked for death. Okay, that was the operation of a death squad on a small, tiny scale. Okay, that's what Barack Obama's mother was doing, was running those death squads. All right, his father was busy putting down the Kikuyu uprising, okay, or they call it the Mau Mau uprising in East Africa for British intelligence. So needless to say, any whistleblower, like myself, meets nothing but resistance, okay, nothing but resistance, or prison time, okay, or prison time. A large number of whistleblowers now are in prison for doing exactly what was right, like John Curacao, okay. John Curacao, who actually engineered the capture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, okay, and then came out and said, we're torturing this man, we can't be doing this. Every bit of evidence we get out of the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the 9/11 plot, okay, is inadmissible. Surprise, he was thrown into prison. That's John Curacao. He is sitting there right now, and the government is trying to seize his home. Okay, that's what a wonderful job our current president has done. Okay?
Right, and more whistleblowers and truth speakers that came out of different organizations, and I do mean every sort of government organization who has spoken up about the illegality of things that are going on, who has spoken up about the immorality, who has spoke up about things that lead to murder, things that lead to financial deceptions, things that lead to corruption in all sorts of ways. There's been more prosecution of whistleblowers under the Obama administration than there was under, Bush, Reagan combined easily.
All presidents to date, Chuck. All presidents from the inception of America as a country to the present date, he has prosecuted more whistleblowers.
Yeah.
All right, that's his record. That's including Ed Snowden. All right, who did nothing but explain to Americans how their government has been compromised by a police state. All right, we are operating in a police state thanks to our government, which seized power, as a result of and much thanks to the 9/11 quote, the 9/11 terrorist attack, which nobody really believes now was a true terrorist attack at all.
Oh, well, you know what? It was a terrorist attack. Absolutely, it was definitely a terrorist attack. It was meant to target the entire population. The real question, is who actually were the terrorists? That's the problem, because even if you lay it at the doorstep of our government directly, which I feel as though you can. There's plenty of ways to say that this was absolutely an inside job, but whether you want to go there or you want to say that it was allowed to happen or you want to say that it was done in collusion with foreign elements, etc., it was still a terrorist attack. But the question is, who is really responsible for it? Who is really the perpetrator of those murders, of all of these successive things that have gone on ever since? And, of course, the erosion and literal slow motion collapse of, our individual rights and freedoms as American citizens ever after. Now, who's responsible for that in reality is a big question, but I still say it's fair enough to call it a terrorist attack, just not the one that we were told about.
Well, as I mentioned, at length to your listeners, week before last, Chuck, the USS Liberty, okay, everybody knows USS Liberty, that was attacked, supposedly it was misidentified by Israel, okay. Now, now that the documentation has been declassified, surprise, it was our own government that attacked allowed the Israelis to attack, encouraged to attack the USS Liberty.
Right.
All right, the USS Liberty. Okay, I just watched a film of the internal Oval Office in Washington with Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president, who ordered the attack on the USS Liberty, actually ordered the reassignment from the Sixth Fleet of the USS Liberty to the 303 Commission. The 303 Commission. It was actually taken out of the Navy and given to the 303 Intelligence Commission, very secretive group, so it could be destroyed. Okay, and then blamed on the Egyptian government. Those bad old Arabs again. Those bad old Arabs. And so the footage I just saw was of Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, our boy from San Angelo, Texas, okay, ranting and raving around the Oval Office, yelling, why wasn't that goddamn ship on the bottom of the ocean? I want it on the bottom of the ocean, okay? He was talking about the Liberty, okay, and the murder of how many hundreds of men, American men. Well, gosh, if a president can rant and rave, order the murder and the sinking of one of our own ships for political expediency, what kind of hesitancy do you think that would set? That would set. What kind of precedent do you think that would set when it comes to ordering the attack on our own soil and calling it a terrorist attack, and then launching one of the greatest dismantlings of the American civil liberties that we've ever seen and had happen? Okay, I mean, none of those directives, those presidential directives that Bush and Cheney implemented, okay, to control the American people, to hunt terrorists, none of those have been appealed or repealed by the Obama administration. Not one. In fact, they've been strengthened.
Absolutely. No, I just want to make it very, very clear that it's not as though I'm only pointing the dirty end of the stick at the Bushes and stuff like that. I mean, this guy is no better. He's literally got no original ideas for himself. That's all he's done, really, is bolster every last one of these programs, whether it be the continuous warfare in the Middle East, or it is the erosion of our freedoms here at home. All of these programs have absolutely been bolstered by during the time that Obama is allegedly having an administration. And like I said, I virtually look at it as the continuation of the previous administration's agenda. So, just to make that extremely clear, there's virtually no difference in my mind, between the two. That's what it comes down to. So, the fact that Bush's name keeps coming up, well, Bush's name keeps coming up in a lot of things. Okay. But
Chuck,
Obama is just as responsible.
Chuck, I need to sign off briefly from your show. I'm getting a call from my attorney who yesterday he won one of the biggest cases against. Okay, this is against the EPA. The EPA was intentionally denying the health benefits to the 9/11 workers.
Right.
And my attorney just won that case against the EPA. The EPA was caught destroying thousands of relevant documents that would have given those workers their benefits. All right. And so he is calling me right now. I need to take this call. I will call you back, and I would love to speak some more to your listeners if that's possible.
Yeah,
is that possible?
Absolutely. Go right ahead and do that, and we'll try and take some other calls in the meantime.
Okay. And I will call back in. Okay.
Absolutely. Great. So,
okay, thank you, Chuck.
No problem. So, hey, look, it's live, and this is the way things go. So, we're going to continue on with the conversation. If you guys want to join in, at the beginning of the show, I turned away a couple of calls because I was having a little bit of trouble over here in front of me. But now I'm wide open and have been for the last little while. So 718-717-8296. You can call in, and I'll just drop you right in. If not, if you're on my Skype list, I will add you straight into the show live on the air. No screening, no waiting, nothing. And if you're not on my Skype list and you want to be, just charles.ochelli. Ochelli is spelled Ochelli. I do forget to spell my own name out for you guys every now and then. And we can continue to discuss these things. To go further, though, I mean, like I said, there is no difference between Obama and Bush in my eyes. It is the continuation of the same corporatist-based policies regarding domestic things. It is the same erosion of, American civil liberties. It is the same destruction of the constitutional republic from the citizens' standpoint, etc. So, not giving Obama any kind of break, believe it. It's just that, look, if I did every single show on what I think are the crimes of Barack Obama, I would never run out of material, and I would not even have to go to the JFK shows. But, but you can find people yelling about Obama everywhere, can't you? So we're talking about the continuous use of all of these different false flags and operations in conjunction with one another to create the atmosphere in which we live currently. Of course, at the very same time, and we didn't even begin to touch on this with Dr. Ford, but, at the very same time, we have the ratcheting up, the increase of action in the, the Middle East, in quotes, with the fall of Yemen, which occurred recently. Of course, Yemen is an interesting pivotal point in the region. Of course, we have the further adventures into the Iraqi theater, which, we're going to have to go back in. I contend we never did leave. Of course, we have the ongoing efforts in Afghanistan, all of these things working in conjunction with the importation of the illicit drugs, the markets that continue to be flooded with a plethora of cheap heroin, good for the goose, but not good for the gander, because once it hits the streets in America, to be a low-level drug dealer, you get prosecuted. If you work with the CIA, though, you definitely get away with it. That's the way that works. And to continuously keep a population in fear and off balance, nervous, sort of looking away and trying to worry about whether their teenagers are being radicalized by the social networking campaign of the ISIS crisis, which is still ongoing. They have even tried to reintroduce the Al-Qaeda boogeyman back into the equation and tried to get people to hear and to believe that this boogeyman is the biggest threat to you, when you have no further to look than the District of Semiramis and all of the criminals who have absolutely worked in collusion with one another to create this disaster that we used to call America. That is what it comes down to, and this is the great great public play that is ongoing, right? So now I'm hearing noise from the other room. I want to check on something. Things are okay, I guess, but all right. Moving forward, this is what the trouble is out there. This is what the big game is, and now, a little bit of public knowledge regarding the Jade Helm thing. But I say again, the use of covert operatives going into domestic areas which have nothing to do with military training, but utilizing the civilian population as test groups, utilizing the civilian population and socialization that is available to them to test how it is they would deal with civilian populations in various locales, to examine the way that it works. Well, if you put it in conjunction, like I said, with the a sort of unrest that was caused by Ferguson, which continues to be caused nationwide, not quite on the loud scale that it was only a few short months ago, but with that all in hand, and and the amping up or the ramping up of the awareness of the militarized police state that we are now confronted with nationwide, what is it that you expect, okay, what is it that you expect but for them to collect the data to understand how it is the civilian population might react to various incursions and violations of their civil rights, of their fellow citizens, of their communities. It is being done on multiple levels. It is, multiple tips of multiple spears being introduced into the population. This is what is happening. Okay? And again, if you want to join in, by the way, challenge me. Tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me that this is all an insane fantasy of mine, if you like. 718-717-8296 or drop in on the Skype. Again, my ID is charles.ochelli. So either way, you can make a contact request. I'll accept it, put you right on the air. Or if you call in, I'll just put you right on the air as well. And we can discuss this and the many, many multiple facets to the panopticon of this particular program, which is where the police state meets the military and meets the great agenda. This is where, not just in the FEMA camps and things like that, and those sort of police state ideas that have been floating about in alternative circles for many, many years, but this is where it really all coalesces. This is where it all comes together. Because although, Dr. Ford was saying that the American public generally won't accept these things and generally would get offended and not be willing to accept the violations of their individual persons, their loved ones, persons, so on and so forth. It's not quite that simple. I believe that a whole lot of the population has been extremely cowed, has been turned into these sort of accepting, sleepwalking individuals who you've got to prick with a bunch of pins before they might even begin to rouse from their sleep state. And this is what the situation is. Okay, so I don't hold a lot of faith. I don't hold a lot of hope. I don't hold a lot of, what should I say? Optimistic feelings for how the American public will react, because I'm watching them react to these things as if to say it is still someone else's problem when the police state has gotten out of control. It's still the Black Lives campaign. It's not a matter of, the mistreatment of the alleged peace officers in every community that are causing the problem. It's not a matter of these military training exercises and all these guys. They kind of grow to accept it in the communities that are adjacent to the military bases that are, occupied with this particular type of activity. Let's just categorize it that way. It's not a matter of them. They just sort of accept it. They've come to understand it and sort of put it into the context of their new normal. And what is the new normal post 9/11, post Oklahoma City, post Ruby Ridge, post Waco, is that, look, here's what happens. Either you have to be submissive, you have to acquiesce, you have to give in to the government entities that are going to come storming in. And although I don't necessarily agree with all the positions that are taken regarding defending the Bundys and that entire situation and the BLM and all that, you got to understand that stuff also fits very much into the same agenda. It's all a matter of pushing forward and normalizing the violation of the police state, of the military entities, of the police agencies, all sorts, not just your local ones, but of course the federal ones, the FBIs, the CIAs, the DEAs, the NSAs, and all of their incursions into your personal freedoms, all of the stuff that they are now allowed to do for the sake of protecting the alleged protection of the alleged American, alleged public. This is what it all comes down to, isn't it? It is all part of the same interlocking web of interesting intrigue that causes the industrial complex of intelligence to be integrated into the greater corporate interests all of the data collection. They don't do it for no purpose whatsoever, as much as you might think the data collection is generally one of those wasted operations. Like this recent story that somebody passed me about them trying to determine whether mosquitoes will actually bite the prettier looking women more often than they will ugly ones, and so on and so forth, as if a mosquito has a way to decide whether a woman is attractive or not. That's an interesting, well, actually, if you turn around and you integrate all sorts of, I don't know, human GMO type elements into the into the mosquitoes, I mean, who knows? Maybe you could actually put human genes into the mosquitoes and create an attraction mechanism that would cause them to seek out more attractive women as opposed to ugly ones. But then again, hey, why not just give all the mosquitoes beer goggles and then they could bite us all equally? Moving forward, the thing is, people think the data collection is one of those sort of overblown and bloated industries. But I tell you that when the government and the intelligence agencies are involved in data collection for the purposes of analyzing, for the purposes of accruing knowledge to really be able to use at a later date in operations yet to be determined, this is the purpose that it is there for. Okay? It is there to do things that, let's see, hey, if Barry Prince is listening, which I just got an indication that he is, Barry, feel free to join in. You can join in via Skype because I know you're on my Skype list, sir. So there, a personal on-air invitation if you want to come on in and deal with the rambling blind lunatic. But anyway, back to it. The thing is, all of it is part of the same program. Why is it that people don't seem to think that this is anything more than the panic related to, the old FEMA camps? And, hey, you might have watched the Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory episode too many times before it disappeared off of the internet. Maybe you've been listening to Panic Attack Jones too much, so therefore you've got an anxiety issue. And, anybody who does actually decide to listen to that corporation on a daily basis, I can imagine, might actually have some form of PTSD or anxiety problem. But regardless of all that, it all does fit together. It's all part of the same agenda. It all makes perfect logical sense that this is what is happening. And Barry Prince has joined me. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Charles? How you doing there, Mr. Ford?
Well, Mr. Ford dropped off for a few minutes, but he will be back. He will be back. But,
Oh, okay, I didn't see that he dropped off there.
No.
Well, you guys were talking about Jade Helm today, and holy smokes there, Charles. Boy, have we ever got a pickle there, eh?
Well, what is...
I think I looked at every bit of information I could get on it today.
Well, what is your take on it? Because you and I haven't talked about this separately, or even we haven't even texted back and forth about it. I mean,
Nope, we haven't.
You've gotten an idea what my take is on it, and part of Mr. Ford's take on it. And he'll be back to discuss it more, I promise you. But the thing is, to me, it's just more of the same agenda, and it fits right in line with all the other things that have been going on. And this data collection is for the purposes of a greater operation. And I don't believe it's for the FEMA camps and the idea of trying to round up American citizenry. Because if it was that type of operation, it would be being conducted differently. I think it is for something that we really have not seen in our crystal ball yet. Something bigger and badder is coming, in my estimation, Barry.
Yeah, I think that would be an understatement, Charles. Like I said, I only got aware of Jade Helm here a week ago, and I started looking at it, but today I had some time, and I kind of researched everything I could possibly get my hands on today about it. All kinds of different alternative media sources, all kinds of documentaries and stuff. And I'm watching around my brain today, and I'll tell you, my feelings is, Charles, that this operation just happens to fall into the same time zone when you're going to see the U.S. Congress try and ratify the Small Arms Treaty Agreement. They're going to apparently do this on the 27th of July, which falls right into the parameters of when this operation takes place. So you got to take into consideration that we know over the years, the government's collected data on every single American citizen has guns. They know who's involved in the militia. They know what we're doing. They know who stands against them. We would pull all that together with GPS that they have, the technology, how they've centered out the people that have firearms, and now we're going to have the military mixed in with U.S. citizens on a large-scale basis like never seen before.
Right.
This all stinks to high heaven to me, buddy. If the American people can't see that they're being set up to be blindsided by this,
It's funny.
They're really got their heads in the sand, buddy.
You're right. You're right, and it's funny that
I can see it black and white.
Exactly, and it's funny that you bring that up because this is one of the things I left out of when I was trying to lay out the whole thing, was that if you put it again in context with all of the individual data that's been collected, I tell people all the time, I assume that absolutely nothing I do is not being surveilled. So we have this great, again, matrix. I hate to utilize the word, but what else am I going to call it? This great matrix of surveillance that has provided information on all individuals that involve themselves in anything remotely electronic. Okay, so you have plenty of data collection on every single individual. You have the data collection now, of populations as a group, communities as groups. And the different groups together just because of geographical proximity. I mean, it's like another step in that particular agenda. It's more of the same. Now, and I said before, they don't collect this data for no reason. It's not collected just for the sake of collection. It's not a scientific observation that's going on here. In general, not to just see how humanity and individuals behave. This is a matter of collecting the intelligence to create the predictive strategies that you're going to require when you do certain things. So when you take a look at the pinpricks that are going on, what happens when we just, straight out kill a citizen who doesn't deserve to be killed? What happens when we do anger a population over an injustice? What happens when they are confronted with, people in military uniforms with heavy weapons in their streets just as commonplace? How normal does it get? Yeah. And that's why when Mr. Ford brought up the whole TSA issue, I said, that was part of the early agenda. Now it's evolving. But to me, it seems like preparation for something large. And I mean, much larger than the idea of these FEMA camps. I really do feel that way.
Yeah, you know what, Charles, I today probably talked to 8 or 9 different people that are into alternative and radio hosts. I've been on Skype all day talking with people and talking. I've had an in-depth conversation with Tim Moen, who's the leader of the Libertarian Party in Canada here. I've conversation with 2 or 3 of these people, and they're really, really watching this because, of course, as events unfold down there, they have a direct influence on Canada. And we're basically in the same boat together on this one. And what we're seeing right now is it's beyond. It's like we're coming out of the matrix zone, and it is actually in our face right now. Everything that we have been talking about, all of these movements in government we've seen here in the last 4 or 5, 6 years. Well, we've seen an incredible acceleration of these events in the last 3 or 4 months. Charles, they're aware. Everybody's aware of that. Now we have this major operation taking place on U.S. soil, unprecedented in U.S. history. We tie that together with what the UN Small Arms Agreement is going to say to the U.S. citizens. If you said to the U.S. citizens, okay, all of a sudden, guys, you got 30 days, every one of you, no exceptions, to turn in your firearms, you are going to start the Civil War. Well, for folks, if the military's in place, they got the weapons, they got the toys, they're mixed in with it, they know who's got the stuff, they know where to go first. Their strategic U.S. people are going to be fast and furious. We have so many things we have to consider here, Charles, about the scenario that could be unfolded when this thing, if it goes hot. And like you said, buddy, I know this is going to go hot, Charles. They've been setting this up for a long, long time. One other thing we have to consider too, Charles, is that other little toys they can throw in there to really put a fudge knuckle into the situation. I.e., we know that our economies are on the verge of collapse. We know that there's pandemic weapons out there that they could drop and say, hey, there's so many things they could throw into the puzzle. All of a sudden, And every one of these things that they've thought out, buddy, I honestly believe that everything we see right now has been thought out in unbelievable, intricate detail with mind-boggling, psychopathic idiots that have no soul and no heart, and they sit in their think tanks and they spend 24 hours a day unfolding we're gonna see it come here in the next little while, buddy. This is really serious stuff, Charles. I didn't want to get into a rant, but that's exactly what I see right now. I take all the little pieces and put them together, and the puzzle is really starting to show its face, buddy. It really is.
Well,
it's
right.
So in our face, we have to look at it.
Well,
it's crazy, man. It's nuts. I'm just an old fart hippie. I see it.
Look, I'm not quite as old as you. I wouldn't call you an old fart, but I'm not quite as old as you. But I see it the same way. It's been laid out for a long time, and yeah, the face is beginning to emerge, and it ain't pretty. The trouble for me though is that, like I said, there's still a whole lot of people out there that are completely unaware to this, that think that, the game is still being played by the old rules that they, taught us a long time ago, and they were all BS when they taught them to us, but they become, complete fiction now as far as the old rules regarding what your rights were, regarding what was protected, regarding what you could and could not do, et cetera, what your privileges were, I should say, instead of rights, excuse me. But the thing is that when you put it all together now, it's a frightening scenario that's unfolding in my mind. And let's just think about this hypothetically, because you bring up another huge point. Hypothetically, okay, if you wanted to clamp down on the entire population, you wouldn't want to imprison us and feed us. That's not part of the plan, okay? But if you did turn around and suddenly there was a big flu epidemic, or, and I'm just using flu because it's the first thing that came to mind, but if suddenly there's a big flu epidemic, which spreads nationwide, you have a serious economic issue where food supplies stop, money supplies stop, electronics become, almost useless, things like that. If all of this were to happen simultaneously, and you've already got your military assets in place, it would be a mop-up job, not even, because there's not going to be that much resistance if they sort of unleash this all at once. You don't send one horseman to create, you don't send one horseman to set off the apocalypse, brother. You send 4 of them. Okay.
You send the ground troops, then the troops, and then the artillery, and then the bowsmen in behind. And then you have a little secret weapon at the end that nobody even knows about.
You got it. I'm not even
set up, Charles. It's so obvious.
Right, and I'm not even a Christian, but I'm just saying, to utilize the Revelations, storyline, you have to use the 4 horsemen, okay? Because each one does a job, and when you put them all together, what you have is just submission, okay? That's what's going to happen here, and I think that's what we're looking at. And, of course, this is one of the last pieces to be moved into place before checkmate actually occurs. But you don't have to sit there and go through the trouble of moving them and imprisoning a population when you can just leave them in place and take away.
Kill them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or,
they'll kill them. They'll kill each other.
Let them implode, right. Just seal them off, steal them out. I mean, look, if you have, if we had an invading army that landed, on our soil here in the U.S., the best thing for us to do would be to isolate them, cut them off from their supplies, and wait them out, right? So this is what I think is happening, and I think, let's see, this might be, okay, you're on the air.
All right. So where are we at with your listeners?
Well, we were discussing the possibilities and what comes of this Jade Helm thing and why it's so worrisome. And Barry Prince has joined me. And this is Frank Gregory Ford back on, by the way, Barry, just so you know.
How you doing, Mr. Ford?
Yeah, Barry.
And we're talking about the possibilities.
We're just discussing Jade Helm.
And what could come from this and why Jade Helm is so important. And I find it remarkable, and why I read the whole Washington Post story there was because it's like, well, listen, this is just more of the same. Don't worry. Everybody go back to sleep. It's okay. We've done this before. This has been done many times, and in a way it has. But this is something new. This is something new, especially in the post 9/11 reality, especially in the post Patriot Act reality, and all of that. Now, Dr. Ford, I'm not sure where you want to go with that, but to me, this is an entirely frightening thing because, as we were discussing, if let's just say somebody wanted to, control and conquer the American populace, and let's just imagine for a moment that it was individuals that had control of our military assets, guess what? This is the perfect moving of the chess pieces into place just before checkmate, is what this is, And of course, we're speculating, but that's because this is not really like all of these other operations from the past, though, is it?
No, it's not. All right. Like I said, this is all post 9/11, and something that I didn't have a chance to tell you before I had to take that call with my law firm was this: is that when all this stuff was going on, all this hysteria, all this situation about protests, happening against going into Iraq, first of all, the media did not carry the length and breadth of those protests. But surprise, almost an immediate response, 2 large concentration camps were built, one in Arizona and the other one in New Mexico, each one capable of holding hundreds of thousands of people. And that's what they are called, concentration camps, when you concentrate a whole bunch of people into a small space. Right. All right? The British started it in Kenya, and then the Germans just picked up the mantle. And of course, we all know what happened as a result of those camps. Okay, don't think it can't happen here. All right, they're watching, they're metering, they're measuring, and the entire public response to situations like this. I remember because I was sending reports in, and we were getting reports, especially from Colonel Schaefer, saying this is going to happen, 9/11 is going to happen. 3 days before, 7 separate intelligence agencies were notifying our government that the terrorist attacks were going to happen. And what did our government do? Oh, mind your own business. We'll deal with it. Yeah, we saw how they dealt with it. And surprise, now we have a perfect situation, the perfect storm, okay, where the people that actually calculated, implemented, operated, and directed the entire 9/11 attack. Do you see any in jail? Do you see any in prison? Do you see any brought up for trial?
No, they weren't even demoted. They weren't even demoted. They were actually, anybody who was involved, quite a bit and supposedly, directly involved in the, quote, failure of intelligence, end quote, was actually promoted. Here's a contention that I made, though, while you were off the air, and I'm wondering what you think of this, because this is how I see it. Strategically, okay, I don't even think that they want to utilize those concentration camps, and here's why. I think that it's a whole lot more strategically viable and effective if they leave people in place and let different catastrophes take care of cutting off supplies, food, etc., etc. There's no reason to go through the expense and effort of moving people and having to feed them and having to house them in these concentration camps, which, of course, we were talking about were FEMA camps earlier. But the thing is, I think that this is more of a strategic change where you can leave the population in place, gauge what they're doing, and control them with the existing assets which have now been embedded, via the test cases of the Jade Helm operation. That's what it seems like to me.
Well, it's always about money. Always about money, okay? And what happened during the closing days of the Bush administration, one of the greatest economic catastrophes to set this country besides the Depression. And it was very comparable to the Depression. Surprise. And people are still losing their homes by the thousands, all right? How many people lost their homes during that follow-on 3-year period, okay, after Bush implemented the complete destruction of the middle class? That's what it was about, removing property from the middle class, okay? And remember what I said earlier? Hey, the only buffer that the middle class has from a autocratic government, okay, an autocratic government bent on total control, all right, total control. And that is, first of all, we had an attack, a ferocious attack that killed thousands and thousands of people, all right, and two endless wars that there's really no end in sight. You think Iraq is over with? Hardly. You think Afghanistan is over with? They're making noise about keeping thousands more there. Okay, but surprise, got all those troublemakers, that know how to kill, and they're trained. We got them locked up in two endless wars. They're called soldiers now. All right.
Right, and one more thing. Just not to lay everything again on the Bushes, let's just be fair. Of course, the entire setup for the implosion of the American economy, which occurred in 2008, which we are still reeling from, regardless of economic talking heads out there trying to tell us that we're recovering quite well. The reality there, that began with the dismantling of the Glass-Steagall Act, which occurred under the Clinton administration. So once again, proving that there is really no difference in the agendas. The whole setup, all of the groundwork was laid out when William Jefferson Clinton was allegedly the chief executive of our nation. So let's not forget that as well. And of course, people blame that on Obama, but you accurately point out that this was in the closing days of the Bush administration when all of that was set into motion. So again, no difference between the criminals at the top. No matter what their name change and their alleged party change is from blue to red, it doesn't matter. It's all purple, and it's all part of the same corporate system, in my estimation. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to again point out fairness for the guy who says I won't pick on Obama. Believe me, we could do whole shows on that. It's not just the Bushes; it's all of them. Okay.
Absolutely. But the factor being is that when you have thousands of disenfranchised American citizens that don't have property, guess what they have to protect them from the state? Guess what they have to negotiate with the state for? The power of the autocratic state. Okay? They have their own bodies. All right? That's what we're talking about. Bodies. So what happens when you have an autocratic government? Just ask the British in Kenya. All right? Concentration camps and an amazing annihilation of populations. All right? Guess what happens in India? The exact same thing. Guess what happened in Germany? Exactly the same thing. When the population doesn't have a material buffer to keep it between itself and its own government, that means the next thing to go is your body. All right? Your body. And that's what the Washington pat-down thing was for in the corridor, okay? Just to see how much personal space invasion would be tolerated, okay? Body cavity searches, gee, they're not unusual. They're not unusual anymore at all right? So, as a result, just a moment. Hey!
Well, and this has to do with the continuation, which has gone on with the TSA, and the pat-downs in the airports and everything else. It is all about the willingness of the population to submit, and this is what the purpose of that has been. That is the absolute point. And the thing is that over time, like you said, the erosion of property rights, the erosion of personal rights, and I hold up air quotes on that because they became privileges as opposed to rights, the way it's going. And in the post 9/11 reality, it is an entirely different playing field. And to tell you the truth, for the first time in a very long time, I'm actually nervous about what they're going to do domestically next. I really am. This Jade Helm thing has, not necessarily inspired panic with me, as it would to certain individuals out there that are broadcasting and are screaming about it. I'm not screaming in panic, but listen, I'm going to raise an eyebrow when it's time. And this to me indicates that it is time to raise an eyebrow.
Please
Well,
keep
I
in
think it
mind,
is
Charles,
too.
too, that
Go
I was
ahead,
just
Barry.
going to make one comment, Charles. One comment is that, their biggest weapon they use against us is fear, okay? And with this operation going on, you're going to have that instilled in people all around what's going on with this. And what I know, when people are put into a state of fear, their minds don't work quite the way they should. Just one thought I wanted to throw in there, because you can see the fear level already. I sensed it today with everybody that I talked to, Charles. Real concern for what we see happening very, very quickly south of the border and in the States, of course. Go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Ford, let me talk.
Well, right. That's
Just wanted
exactly
to
the
put that in there. So.
No, I appreciate it, Barry, because you're exactly right. This is the thing. I'm not going to allow it to instill fear in me, and I'm not going to encourage anybody else to be afraid
Exactly.
and be very, very afraid. That it's not time to be afraid. You can be alert without being afraid. You can defend yourself without the use of fear if necessary. You can, operate quite well without fear. In fact, the fight or flight response, there's a reason why those two are tied together. And, you just have to be prepared and be willing to fight, because flight is not going to help here. That's what it comes down to. So I would say don't embrace the fear about this issue, but be aware of it. And also understand that, this is worrisome to some degree, but it doesn't mean that you should conduct your lives or embrace fear as your guiding emotion in this time. That's for certain. So, but you're exactly right. These types of things are precisely put out there, and that's why I'm not trying to, really go crazy on the subject, because I don't want to instill fear in anybody who does decide to listen to this. I don't want to give them the idea that it's time to panic. It's definitely not time to panic, but it is time to be aware.
Absolutely. I can say with all reassurance, because I have traveled over 30 years, I have seen governments rise, and believe me, I've been there when they've fallen. All right, I've been there in mortal combat, where my life was threatened every single moment I was there. Okay, that's what's happened over 3 decades with me, and when I was in Iraq, I could see. I'm sitting at the tip of the spear. I could see what was happening. When I was at Abu Ghraib, I could see what was happening to America. Now, I need to point something out here. First of all, we're not supposed to be afraid of our government. The citizenry of a country are not supposed to be afraid of the government. The government is supposed to be terrified of its citizenry. All right. So when the citizenry doesn't like something, the government is to respond. All right, and deal with it. Who hires who here? Okay. All right. The American people hire these politicians. Okay. They pay their salary and their nonstop retirement and benefits and goodies. Okay, not the banks, which is what it looks like now. Okay, 98, what is it, 94 to 98% of all lobbying is carried on by banks. Okay, and special interests. No, it's the American people who pay the bill here. That's who the governments answer to. Now, in terms of fear, yes, government should be terrified of their citizenry. Terrified, all right? If you don't, if the government thinks they have nothing to be afraid of, surprise, all your rights, okay, will start diminishing and disappearing one by one. Anybody doubt that that's happened in this country? You better wake up, okay? All right? I've seen it over 30 years, every other country. And that's what brings me to this point right here. Okay? You think that this Jade Helm is just innocuous in a little military exercise? Oh, no. 20 years ago, it might have been considered that. Not now. There is something called Copper Green, all right? Copper Green Project, okay? Innocuous sounding, innocent sounding, okay? Well, there is a whole lot of people sitting in cells all over the world in what are called black operation sites, being tortured and butchered, okay? Tortured and butchered, all right? At the request of their governments, and that's about 70 governments of the world. 70 to 75 countries subscribe to Copper Green, okay? Do you know who initiated copper green? The Central Intelligence Agency and the RAND Corporation initiated it as a revenue-generating system of civilian control. Okay? Don't think for 1 second that it won't be initiated here. Okay? Don't think at all. It generates billions of dollars a year, and that is what is in my court case. That is what has been sealed by the government in my court case. That information right there. It's copper green. It is a revenue generation system of political torture, rendition, kidnapping, abduction, and murder for a fee, of course. That's the American way here, for a fee, all right? So don't think it won't be, if there's money in it, it won't be implemented in this country.
Oh, right.
Don't think for 1 second.
And that's terrorism, and that's terrorism for profit, and that's an appropriate use of the word terrorism. Okay? That is terrorism. But for profit, as you said. And this is one of the operations that's going on. And like I said, when you put it all in context with this stuff, it just says that the agenda is still moving forward. This is what the trouble is. Now, what does that mean? And what is it that we're going to have to do about it? That's a whole other issue. But but the idea is that, look, let's finally say, those of us who are supposed to be on the on the crazy conspiracy side of things here, this is a reality. This is what's going on. This is part of the agenda that has been going on. This is not something that appeared overnight and is just going to come to a theater near you this summer. Okay, this is what's happening. And like I said, worrisome, yes. Am I going to allow it to, paralyze me? Am I going to allow it to paralyze those I care about? I hope not. But we do need to be aware, and I am a bit worried about what this really means, what this is going to lead to. And I do think that it's one of those situations where it'll be a whole lot more efficient to deal with the population without rounding them up. I really do think that. So, for those that always talk about those FEMA camps, I just don't see it as the most viable strategic option. From the other side. See, I try to think like my enemy a little bit. And to me, the greater enemy here is not just fear, but those that do believe that they are supposed to be able to rule the populations and do with people as they choose for profit, for their own gains, for these agendas that have nothing to do with human rights and humanity in general. Sorry, guys, that was my little addition into that, but, that's how I feel about
it. The important thing to understand is that up until 9/11, sure, there were commodities in the world, gold, silver, oil, drugs, they were all commodities. Do you know what the main commodity on the globe is now that is being exploited by groups like the Copper Green Project? Do you know what it is? As I said earlier, okay, and I can't go into this enough, okay, it's your body. That's what is the commodity revenue generating product here, all right? That's the way these governments are beginning to look at the citizens in each country. Okay, that's the way your government looks at you, is a commodity revenue-generating unit, all right? That's why if you get put into a concentration camp, and believe me, I'm under no illusions whatsoever, I'll be one of the first, okay, to get handed a pair of striped pajamas, okay, and get thrown into one, okay? I'll be one of the first, all right? There's no question there. But guess what? The government will be paid to keep me there, all right? Look at our prison systems, okay? Those are revenue-generating entities, okay? All across America, we have the largest prison system in the world. It's not Russia. It's not China. It's America, okay? And that is
more incarcerated citizens per capita than any other nation on the planet is in the United States of America.
You've got it.
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
got it. And as soon as you lose your home, as soon as you have no money to speak of, to defend yourself with, okay? And don't think that you don't have anything the government doesn't want. You have your body. The government wants manual labor, okay? That's how they measure the commodities of these countries, especially developing countries, is the number of persons available for manual labor. That is the new commodity that turns the world, that greases the skids, okay, that makes the economy roll, is manual labor. That's how every government is evaluated now, and every country is evaluated is its perspective on manual labor for production. All right? So that's what America has had happen. You know, these neocons, when 9/11 was happening, okay, and afterwards, they weren't thinking, oh, how do we stop terrorism? No, it's how do we implement all these goodies, okay, on the population, and everybody's just sitting still saying, oh, gosh, we got to fight terrorism. Hopefully our government, who would never do something like 9/11, is actually doing that, is fighting terrorism, okay? Right. No, they were implementing civil control methods. Remember I said G5? I was talking about G5? Mm-hmm. G5 is an entity of our government, okay? And it controls civil actions. That's what our government was doing, you know, the entire time, and it's still doing it. It's stronger now than ever, okay? Obama, no, he does not sleeves off the hook, okay, like he's trying to, with all these diversions, like opening up Cuba. Gee, well, nice idea. How come they didn't do it 30 years ago? All right?
Yeah.
You know, okay? All these things, you know, Obamacare, gee, great idea. Oh, there's that monitoring of the individual person's body, okay? It has become a revenue-generating issue. Obamacare, who is it supposed to be taking care of? Individuals and their medical needs, okay? Revenue generating, all right? So what would happen in this country if, as a doctor, I can say this, if you started paying your doctor to cure you and treat you and cure you and then paid him? That's just uncapitalistic, okay? Gosh, you know, not to pay him all your life savings like most of us do in our life. Most of us will spend more money staying alive the last week of our existence than we spend the entire lifespan, which we're working busy and making other people money, say. Okay, we will spend more staying alive that last week, okay, than our entire lives combined. Okay, so hence you have all these situations going on, like the use of which has now been approved, spraying of Agent Orange on food crops now to get rid of weeds. Say what? And of course, our government approved it. Okay, there we go again. Selling of the individual body, okay, as a commodity generating revenue. Okay, so that is what we have to look forward to because we have been complacent. When our government was taken over after 9/11, this is exactly what we have coming. All right, we don't have people now that have the wealth to stand up to the government. Okay, the middle class has been dismantled. It's been slaughtered like a fat pig. Okay, like a big fat hog. All right. So this is what we have, and the only way we can defend or even be aware that this process is going on is to pay attention to the internet, which the government is intent on dismantling and controlling and looking for a cutoff switch. They already control all the other major media outlets. Let's face it. Okay, I even thought CNN was sort of okay till I went to Iraq. Oh, what a joke! Okay,
yeah,
what a joke! All right, where I was in Balad, it was 100 yards away from the CNN facility. And did anybody hear that I had discovered WMD, as in produced by the Carlyle Group, P400 bomb casings? We were 100 yards away from CNN. Did you hear CNN put out the story? No, they still haven't put out the story years later. All right, that shows you how effective our news services are. You know what would happen if they put out that story? Hey, great, we found WMD. Let's get out of Iraq. Let's go home. Gee, we're all dressed up, nowhere to go. Let's go home. How's that? No, instead it drug on for 12 more years.
Right.
The longest ground war ever.
They couldn't have made enough money out of the operation had it just been that short, over and done with, and if that's what the actual purpose was, because you found it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, of course, like I told you the first time I had you on my show, is that it always sat very strangely with me. The idea that, well, gee, we went to look for weapons of mass destruction and they weren't there. Whoops. Failure of intelligence once again. But it wasn't a failure of intelligence. It was just a matter of a cover-up once again to try and keep responsibility from what was actually happening off of the individuals in charge. And again, to divert responsibility from the individuals, again, namely H.W. Bush being one of the people that was involved with the Carlyle Group, along with some other people with some interesting last names like Bin Laden, by the way, who were involved with the Carlyle Group, who absolutely gave them these weapons. And, like I said, that joke used to be around there for the longest time. Of course we know Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. We still have the receipts somewhere. The fact is that joke was a whole lot closer to the truth than anything you were going to get from CNN, which was maybe we found him, maybe we didn't, maybe we found him, maybe we didn't. And even W himself making jokes that is an unforgettable piece of film. Gee, are there any weapons of mass destruction over here? Nope, none there. Are there any over here? Nope, none there. And meanwhile, a lie that was given to the American public for the purposes of revenue generation, not only for us to increase the presence of the American empire globally, but also to give, nice, wonderful no-bid contracts to people like Halliburton, who, of course, benefited from everything from the Vietnam War, to my estimation, to today. People like that, and all of the other wonderful pigs that have their snouts in the trough of the military-industrial complex to continue to fuel them all. This is what the purpose of this has been. This is what the purpose of putting, our men in harm's way has been, in more ways than one, not just from insurgents, but from chemical elements that were present there, from depleted uranium, from weapons that you're still not sure what you saw over there, Dr. Ford, regarding some of the weaponry that was used. Okay, things that we discussed about that Soviet truck and all that, really strange and fascinating. I wonder if you wouldn't mind touching on that really quickly, because we are running low on time now.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, it's important that your listeners understand those weapons of mass destruction. Yes, I produced the bills of lading. Okay, where they were produced in Fort Rucker, Alabama. They were 1,000-pound bomb casings converted to hold VX/GF gas, nerve gas. Okay. Those are called, one canister is called a city killer, okay, for a reason, all right? Those, and the bills of lading, where they were produced, who transported those weapons to this site. And by the way, there was a senatorial prohibition on those weapons ever leaving U.S. shores. Here they were in an underground bunker, okay, in Iraq, all right? It was the Carlyle Group. Gee, what's the name synonymous with the Carlyle Group, okay, as in George H.W. Bush, okay, all right. Does that ring a bell with anybody? George H.W. Bush? Everybody's acting like his passing is a terrible event, okay. Gee, I'm sure 1.2 million Kurds and Iranians would disagree that are now dead as a result of that nerve gas, all right. 3 weeks ago, the CIA very sheepishly, very quietly confirmed what I've been telling your listeners all this time. They said, yes, they have been buying back weapons of mass destruction from Iraq and Syria for several years. And the only reason why they did it was because, quote, there was evidence now that our troops have been exposed to nerve gas toxins. Oh, gosh, the humanitarian concerns were just oozing out of that release. Okay, gee, that's terrible, all right? But secondly, my source, Abu Sager, who, go to that site and you'll see my name, okay, for being renditioned all over with all the government documents that follow on, Okay, Abu Sager was Saddam Hussein's banker. He informed me it was the Bank of Credit and Commerce International that financed and gave them the pressure plates to produce their own money to send back to the United States hundreds of millions of dollars for those weapons of mass destruction. Hey, what a great deal, okay? I mean, they can't afford to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, so, surprise, somebody from Bocce Bank sends them, okay, Bank of Credit and Commerce International sends them the pressure plates to counterfeit hundreds of millions of dollars, U.S. dollars, okay, which, by the way, were recorded and sent, okay, duly to our Internal Revenue Service, and the FBI was briefed on this issue, all right? Those were sent, and surprise, okay, Bocce Bank was started, founding member George H.W. Bush. You know, always remember, and I'll close up my end of the things here, a kinder, gentler president. Remember, he wanted a kinder, gentler America. Well, the death squads in Central America rampaged under his kinder, gentler regime. We had the Gulf War, which weapons of mass destruction, which he could have stopped. He had the vote to stop those weapons from ever being produced. Oh, no, he not only produced them, yet he started a company to sell those weapons to whoever had the money. And if you didn't have the money, he'd send you the pressure plates to go ahead and counterfeit your own money to send back to us, okay? By the way, those are the $100 bills that they're finding all over the place now that don't have the optical coating, okay, on the $100, on the $100 symbol, okay? That's the counterfeit money that's coming back from Iraq, all right? Surprise. Is anybody surprised? That's what kind of government we've had in control of, of the United States, all right? No, it wasn't just George W. Bush. It was his illustrious father. And then, if we had more time, we'd go into the wonderful workings of his father, Prescott Bush, okay, the best friend of the Nazi regime, okay, who invented, Cyclone B. Cyclone B was the precursor, nerve gas to what else? VX gas that was produced and sold to Saddam Hussein. All right,
and also through the banking in New York and all of that was also on the board, which was called on the carpet for the Trading with the Enemies Act. Prescott Bush was, because he was actually dealing with them. And if you take a look at the economic realities behind Tyson supporting the Hitler regime in Nazi Germany, guess what? Now you can figure out where all the rest of the money came from, which is that wonderful bank in New York that Prescott Bush happened to be sitting on the board of. And all of this is provable nowadays. But, of course, this is the type of guy who should spawn two of our American presidents. And, I don't think Prescott Bush ever went to prison for any of that stuff, did he?
No, he actually got stronger. After the war ended, his companies were never so strong. There was actually charges drawn up, naming him as aiding and abetting the enemy during a war, all right? And after, when he came back, and by the way, I actually have had in my hands those non-negotiable bearer bonds from the Bush family, okay, that were paid by I.G. Farben, F-A-R-B-E-N, I.G. Farben, who produced Cyclone B, which sent millions of Jews to their deaths, okay, in the concentration camps. I have held those non-negotiable bearer bonds in my hands, all right? So, yes, it did happen. It wasn't made up. This isn't all a bunch of propaganda and a bunch of nonsense. No, it did happen. And as a result, America is paying with the blood of its soldiers that are dying. As I'm saying this, we have soldiers dying somewhere in a Bush-caused war. All right? It doesn't get any simpler than this. Yes, what you have to pay with is your body, all right? And don't think this government isn't set up to where it appreciates having your body to sell on the open market.
Right. And in one way or another, you're going to get collected because, whether you decide to sign up for the military or not. Of course, if you sign up for the military at this point in time, which I discourage anybody from doing, although, I say all the time that I have respect for those that have served, I discourage anybody from serving in the military at this point in time, because you are simply the easier to lay hands on pawns of the greater corporate interests anymore. That is what it is. You're not defending this country. You're simply fighting the corporate wars and all of these things. And of course, the example that you gave us about going in there to get rid of weapons of mass destruction is so poignant. It's not even remotely a joke, So here's the thing. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to thank everybody who decided to tune in for the Ochelli Effect tonight on Thursday night. Of course, on Saturday night, it'll be JFK Mythology again, and it'll be part 3, and this one will be a hell of a show, I guarantee you. But I want to thank Barry Prince for having called in. I also want to thank, Frank Gregory Ford, who has joined me many times, and we've discussed many different issues, but all of them amazingly on point, sir. And I really do appreciate all the time you spent with us and the interesting sort of insights that you provide regarding these things as a former intelligence operative, as a former counterintelligence operative, as a medical professional who served in the military and attempted to do the right thing, blew the whistle not only on the weapons of mass destruction, but also on the issue of torture and the illegality with which a lot of the covert actions and overt actions, in fact, were being performed, in all of our names. Because the thing is that every time these military assets and intelligence assets go out there under the banner of the alleged United States of America, this is what they are doing. They're acting supposedly on our behalf in our names. And these are the things that I find unacceptable as an American citizen. I think everybody should. And of course, Jade Helm is something that everybody needs to be aware of. I think we need to keep a real great eye on it and all of the things that may come from it, because it is worrisome where things are headed, not only where they've been, but where they are headed. So before my bumper kicks in, I want to give Barry a last chance to throw in something. As I said, we've only got about a minute left here, so go ahead, Barry, if you want to get in a last word.
15 seconds. Hey, Mr. Ford, it's a pleasure listening to you talk, sir. You fill in a lot of the dots for me, and your depth of knowledge is a joy to listen to. Thanks for having me on, Charles. Anytime I can jump in and make a few comments, I'm always happy to do so. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, Barry. Barry's, of course, host of The Big Puzzle on Shake and Wake Radio and is a friend of mine. So thank you for calling in, Barry. I do appreciate it. And Dr. Ford, is there anything you want to say in closing?
Okay. Just like I said, just remember the name, the Butcher of Latin America. That's who I am dealing with right now, Colonel James Steele, Steele. Go to everybody. I want your listeners to go read about what is being done, okay, in our names, all right, and what I'm dealing with. And you'll have the next show. I'll even give your listeners a report on what's happening with the Butcher of Latin America. All right.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that, as well as getting an update on your legal action, which is absolutely going to be one of the things that, when it is complete, I think will be a serious mark in the history books. And I'm really grateful that you take the time to come on here with me and discuss all of these things. But of course, your personal story is of extreme interest to me and to a lot of the listeners, and I want to thank you again. So, and thank everybody for listening tonight, for tuning into the Ochelli Effect, which is the name of the show. I do forget to say it from time to time, here on ucy.tv, and you can find the show at ucy.tv/TOE if you're listening to
Outstanding.